Okay, so I want you to imagine lying on an operating table.
Right. Just picture the scene.
Yeah. Your skull is open. You're completely under deep general anesthesia and anesthesia.
Which is an incredibly intense state for the body to be in.
Exactly. And, the surgical team is moving around you. The monitors are beeping. The room is bright. It's just intensely active.
Lots of sensory input in that room.
Right. But internally for you, there is just an absolute profound void. By every medical measure we possess, the you that experiences the world, the conscious self, is entirely gone.
Gone. Unreachable.
Yeah. You aren't asleep. You aren't dreaming. You are just erased from the room. And yet, deep inside the dark architecture of your brain, your neurons are actively listening to a story being played through headphones.
They're processing it.
They're recognizing the syntax. They're predicting the next word before it even arrives.
Yeah.
And they're learning, improving, adapting.
Which is wild.
It is, because if you aren't there to hear the story, who or what is doing the listening?
It's the kind of scenario that it completely shatters our fundamental assumptions about biology.
Oh, totally.
We have this deep-seated belief that complex cognitive tasks like, understanding language or learning a new pattern, that they require a conscious agent, a doer behind the wheel.
Yeah, because we rely on a very specific, very comforting mental architecture to make sense of ourselves.
You really do.
We imagine the mind as a house, and consciousness, you, me, that internal narrator parsing my words right now, is the person living inside that house, the homeowner.
Right, and it goes back centuries, really, that Descartes formalized it with dualism, but intuitively, it's just how we feel.
Right, the ghost in the machine.
Exactly. There's the physical stuff of the brain, the floorboards, the walls, the wiring, and then there's the ghost. The homeowner who turns on the lights, looks out the windows, arranges the furniture, and ultimately, experiences the space.
And the logic just naturally follows that when the homeowner is switched off, the house goes dark and still.
That's the assumption.
Right? Like the furniture stays where it is. Obviously, the heart keeps beating, the lungs keep pumping, but nothing meaningful happens in the rooms. We assume that absence equals emptiness.
Right.
No witness, no event.
Right.
If you aren't there to experience your mind isn't doing anything that matters.
Yeah, which is exactly why the data we're looking at today forces a total reevaluation of what we actually are.
Yeah.
Because when you step into the world of severe neurological observation, that comforting architectural metaphor completely collapses.
It does. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly how and why that collapse happens.
Yes.
We are looking at this amazing essay titled Form Without a Witness. It's this brilliant, haunting piece of writing that examines a groundbreaking 2026 study published in the journal Nature by researchers Katlowitz, Hayden, Sheth, and their colleagues.
An incredible team, yeah.
So we're going to look at the terrifyingly strange reality of what the brain is doing when the lights go completely out. And to really grasp the magnitude of this, we need to understand the physical reality of what it means for the lights to be off in this specific context.
Because we need to be very, very precise about the state these patients were in. The study involved 7 human beings undergoing epilepsy surgery.
Right.
And epilepsy surgery often requires identifying the exact focal point of seizures, which sometimes means, mapping the brain while the skull is actually open.
Wow.
But for this specific part of the procedure, the patients were fully under general anesthesia. Anesthesia.
And I think people really misunderstand what general anesthesia and anesthesia actually is.
Whoa, constantly.
We use the word sleep, but it's a terrible analogy.
It's a completely inaccurate analogy, honestly. Sleep is an active, dynamic neurological state. Your brain cycles through REM, it consolidates memories, it generates those vivid hallucinatory experiences we call dreams.
Right, you're still doing stuff.
Exactly. General anesthesia, and SESU, on the other hand, is essentially a chemically induced reversible coma.
Oh, coma.
Yeah. The drugs, often a combination of propofol, fentanyl, paralytics, they fundamentally disrupt the communication pathways across the cerebral cortex. They don't just make you tired.
They shut down the network.
They dismantle the integrated network of information sharing that gives rise to the conscious self. The thalamus stops relaying sensory information to the higher cortical areas in any meaningful, cohesive way.
So the experiencing self is taken entirely offline. So you have these 7 individuals in this deeply vulnerable, entirely absent state.
Yes.
And while they are in that void, the researchers threaded these incredibly fine probes deep into their brains. specifically into the hippocampus.
And that targeting is crucial. The hippocampus is universally recognized as the central engine of memory and spatial navigation.
The memory center.
Right. It's a highly complex associative region tucked deep down in the temporal lobe. If the brain is a vast library, the hippocampus is the master indexer.
Okay, I like that.
It takes all the disparate sensory inputs of your life, the smell of rain, the sound of a voice, the visual layout of a room, and it binds them together into a cohesive memory trace.
And they didn't just use standard electrodes. The essay notes they used high-density neuropixels probes.
Which is a massive technological leap for us. For decades, if we wanted to listen to the brain, we largely relied on EEG.
The cap with the wires.
Right, which is like putting a microphone outside a massive football stadium and trying to guess what the crowd is saying based on the overall roar.
Just a lot of noise.
Exactly. Or we used fMRI, which tracks blood flow and is frankly relatively slow. Neuropixels are entirely different. These are silicon shanks, thinner than a human hair.
Thinner than a hair.
Thinner than a hair, packed with nearly 1,000 recording sites. When you thread one into the hippocampus, you aren't listening to the roar of the stadium.
You're listening to individual conversations.
You are recording the exact electrical spikes, the action potentials of hundreds of individual neurons simultaneously in real time.
You are watching the fundamental code of the brain as it fires. So let's picture this literal physical reality again. A loud, busy, intensely bright operating room.
Lots of chatter machines.
Yeah. Sound waves are hitting the eardrums of the patient. The mechanical vibrations of the surgeons talking and the machines beeping are turning into electrical signals, and those signals are traveling up the auditory pathways.
They are physically entering the nervous system.
Right. But because the conscious self is dismantled by the anesthesia and ESO, the assumption of modern medicine has always been that those signals just hit a dead end.
Yep.
They ripple into the dark and dissipate. There is no one there to hear them.
A tree falling in an empty forest. The sound waves exist, but the subjective experience of sound does not.
But Katlowitz, Hayden, and Sheth decided to test that empty forest. Into the silence of these anesthetized minds, they played sounds through earphones.
They introduced a controlled stimulus.
They provided things to hear to an empty house. And what they found completely upends the idea of the dead end. The neurons answered. The house listened.
It didn't just listen. It performed computational gymnastics that we previously thought were exclusive to awake conscious processing.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that, because the essay highlights 3 distinct findings from the neuropixels data, and each one builds into a stranger reality.
It's a really elegant progression of tests.
Yeah, so they started by playing a run of identical tones, followed by an odd one. A standard oddball discrimination test. Beep, 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 boop.
Right. Now, on the surface, noticing a boop among beeps sounds incredibly simple.
A baby could do it.
Sure, but look at what the biology actually has to do to accomplish that. It requires what we call mismatch negativity.
Mismatch negativity.
Yeah. To recognize a pattern break, a population of neurons must first hold the previous tones in a short-term buffer, working memory. It then has to calculate a statistical probability.
It has to do math.
It builds a predictive model that says, based on the last 4 inputs, the probability of the next input being a beep is 99%.
It's constantly doing the math of the future.
Exactly. It's a framework called predictive coding. The brain isn't passively waiting for reality to happen. It is actively hallucinating what the next microsecond will bring.
Hallucinating the future.
Right. So when the boop arrives, it violates the statistical expectation. The auditory cortex and the hippocampus have to calculate the difference between the prediction and the reality, generate a prediction error signal, and flag the anomaly.
And the neuropixels show the neurons in the hippocampus of these completely unconscious, anesthetized people doing exactly that.
Yes, they did.
The neurons flagged the odd tone. The brain noticed the pattern break in the dark. It built the statistical model, waited for the tone, and fired an error signal when the wrong tone arrived.
All without anyone home to care about the pattern.
That is just wild.
Which is fascinating, but, from a neurological standpoint, auditory mismatch negativity has been observed in unconscious states before, albeit rarely with this level of single neuron resolution deep in the hippocampus. It's the subsequent findings that push this into totally uncharted territory.
Right, because a beep and a boop are just acoustic frequencies. But then the researchers played a voice telling a story.
Yes.
They played an audio clip of a narrative to a chemically comatose brain. And the neuropixels showed the neurons weren't just reacting to the acoustic properties of the voice, the highs and lows of the physical sound waves.
No, they were tracking the language.
They were processing semantics.
Yeah.
And this just blows my mind. Because understanding a word isn't just about hearing a sound. It requires accessing a distributed neural lexicon.
A massive database.
Right. If I say the word apple, your brain has to instantly retrieve the visual memory of an apple, the concept of a fruit, the crunch, the sweetness. It is a massive associative web.
And we know this requires highly complex, widely distributed cortical networks. To process semantics, the auditory cortex has to identify the phonemes, send that data to Wernicke's area to comprehend the language.
Which is on the other side of the brain, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a specific region in the temporal lobe, but yes, it requires interfacing with other regions, like the hippocampus, to link the words to stored conceptual memories.
Got it.
The fact that this level of intricate, multi-regional networking is happening under general anesthesia and SEZ is staggering. It means the structural pathways of meaning remain intact and active even when the global workspace of consciousness is dissolved.
The essay describes this in such a visceral way. It points out that the neurons didn't just passively decode the words as they arrived. They engaged in online word prediction. They began to anticipate.
Yes, anticipation. When we are awake and engaged in a conversation, our brains are highly efficient prediction engines.
Always guessing what's next.
Exactly. If I say, it was raining, so I opened my
umbrella.
Right. Your brain has already preloaded the neural representation of the word umbrella. It lowers the activation threshold for that specific concept so that when the word arrives, you process it instantly. You don't wait for the end of the sentence to figure out what it means. You lean forward into the syntax.
Leaning forward into the syntax. I love that phrasing so much. It perfectly describes the shape of an attending mind.
It really does.
But doing that requires a deep understanding of narrative context, grammar, and vocabulary. The nature of the story dictates what words can logically follow. And the neuropixels in these patients show their hippocampal neurons were firing in patterns that anticipated the meaning of the next word before the word was actually spoken through the headphones.
The neural ensembles were actively preparing for a specific semantic future.
But how does a mind lean slightly ahead of a sentence when the mind is technically turned off? This is where the house metaphor gets so eerie for me.
How so?
Imagine walking past a house at night. The lights are off, the doors are locked, the family is gone. But if you press your ear to the window, you can hear the appliances inside having a conversation, predicting the weather, organizing the calendar.
That's a great image.
The work of living is continuing with absolutely no one to do it for.
And if the semantic prediction doesn't fundamentally shake your assumption about consciousness, the third finding of the study definitely will.
A plasticity.
Yes. And the essay rightly highlights this as the most paradigm-shifting data point. Representational plasticity.
Plasticity. The brain's ability to change. Meaning learning. Getting better at something.
Precisely. Over the 10 minutes that the audio was playing in the operating room, the patient's brains didn't just maintain a steady, static state of listening, they improved.
Wow.
The oddball discrimination sharpened. The neural representations of the semantic concepts became more defined, more efficient. The brain was actively learning the statistical structure of the auditory input.
In the dark.
In the dark. Let's look at the biology of learning for a second here. Learning at a cellular level is long-term potentiation, or LTP.
Okay, unpack that.
When two neurons fire together repeatedly, the chemical synapse between them strengthens. They build more receptors, they release more neurotransmitters. It physically takes energy and structural remodeling to learn, and this remodeling was happening in real time.
It was quietly improving at a task it was performing for no one. Think about what it means to keep a result when there is no one there.
Right.
Usually, if you learn something, you learn it. You sit down, you study French, you acquire a new piece of information, and you, the homeowner, possess it.
Conscious acquisition.
Yeah. But here, the hippocampus is refining its discrimination, is tightening its predictive models, completely isolated from the person who supposedly owns that brain.
It's adapting to an environment that it technically isn't experiencing.
A brain learning in the dark is like a ghost playing a piano in an empty room. The form held. The listening, the predicting, the learning, the whole intricate, delicate shape of a mind attending to the world, it held without a witness to hold it.
Okay, now hold on. This is where I have to step in.
Uh-oh.
Because what you are doing right now is exactly what the essay warns us about. You are getting swept away by the poetry of the anomaly.
I knew you were going to drop a wall on my excitement. You're putting on the neuroscientist hat.
I have to. Someone has to anchor this to the ground. I have to take a very firm, unyielding stance here because the deflationary reading of this study is scientifically crucial.
Okay, lay it on me.
If we don't apply rigorous boundaries, a finding like this gets inflated into mysticism, which it absolutely is not. The essay itself concedes this, and we cannot gloss over that concession.
Okay, I am ready. Deflate my balloon. What is the rigorous boundary?
The deflationary reading looks at exactly what the data proves, and more importantly, what it doesn't prove. First, the caveats. This is one specific brain region, the hippocampus.
Right.
It is one specific kind of anesthesia, an SEEZ. It's a very small sample size of 7 human beings. But the paramount scientific takeaway, the point that the researchers themselves are explicitly clear about, is this. Complex neural processing is not consciousness. Full stop.
But it's processing language. It's anticipating meaning. It's physically altering its synapses to learn a pattern. How is that not the hallmark of a conscious mind?
Because it is engaging in mechanical computation. Sophisticated computation, yes, but mechanical nonetheless. Think of it like a highly advanced algorithm.
Like AI.
Exactly. We have artificial neural networks right now, large language models, that can parse syntax, predict the next word in a sentence with astonishing accuracy, and update their weights based on new data. They exhibit representational plasticity. But we don't assume the server farm is conscious.
So you're equating the human hippocampus to a server farm.
In this specific state, yes. Imagine a fully automated car manufacturing plant. The lights are turned off to save electricity because the robots don't need light to see.
Okay.
The conveyor belts are moving, the robotic arms are welding, the optical sensors are perfectly aligning the doors, the software is anticipating the next chassis coming down the line and adjusting its grip. The factory is predicting, it is processing, it is even using machine learning to tighten its tolerances and get better at welding over a 10-minute span.
I follow the analogy. The factory is doing complex work in the dark.
But there is no ghost in the machine. There is no subjective, phenomenological experience of being a factory.
The factory doesn't know it's a factory.
Right. There is no witness feeling the sparks of the welder. It is just a complex network of inputs and outputs executing a program. The 2026 Nature study is brilliant evidence of exactly that principle applied to biology.
Cool.
It proves that the human brain can run remarkably sophisticated operations like semantic processing and representational plasticity without the global workspace of consciousness being active.
You're saying we just miscategorized what listening and learning actually are.
Precisely. We suffer from an anthropocentric bias regarding our own cognition. We simply assumed that listening, predicting, and learning required a witness because we only ever notice them when we are awake to witness them.
Oh, interesting.
We assumed they were inherently conscious activities. This study proves we were wrong. They are computationally demanding activities, yes, but they do not require a subjective experiencer. The lights in those patients' minds were genuinely off. Nothing in this NeuroPixels data proves that the patients experienced anything at all.
Right.
The likeliest, most honest reading is that much of what we took to require a witness never did. It's just the machinery running its code.
Okay. I hear you. I hear the neuroscientist's wall, and I concede it. The essay concedes it. It says point blank, nothing here proves the patients experienced anything. It was just computation.
Good.
But I refuse to stop at that concession.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you off the hook that easily.
I didn't think you would, but you have to accept the mechanics.
I accept the mechanics. I accept the dark factory floor.
Yeah.
But even if we accept the deflationary reading, even if we accept that the brain is just doing heavy computation without a conscious self, it doesn't shut down the mystery. In fact, it rips open a much larger, much more terrifying philosophical hole because it separates two things we had always inextricably felt were one.
The form of an act and someone present for it.
Exactly. The shape of the work and the worker. We always assumed that to listen, to predict, to learn, there had to be a someone, that these were things a self does. And here they are, happening cleanly, perfectly, with the self chemically erased.
The mechanical process without the observer.
The shape of the tending, with no one attending. The pattern of a mind, with no mind home. So if we accept your deflationary reading, if the factory can build the car perfectly in the dark, it forces the absolute hardest question in all of cognitive science.
Which is?
What is the witness, FOR?
Ah, yes. That is the abyss.
It is the abyss.
Yeah.
Think about the evolutionary biology of this. If the brain does all the heavy lifting in the dark, if the local circus can hear a story, decode the syntax, anticipate the next word, and physically alter their synaptic weights to learn and improve without me being there.
Without your conscious awareness.
Right, then what is my consciousness actually contributing right now? If the house can do all the chores, cook the meals, and pay the bills without the homeowner, why the hell did evolution build the homeowner?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact wall that modern neuroscience and philosophy of mind hit when they try to explain the evolutionary purpose of subjective experience. You're hitting on what philosophers call the zombie problem.
Explain the zombie problem, because I feel like a zombie right now just thinking about this.
A philosophical zombie is a hypothetical being that is physically identical to a normal human being, behaves exactly like a normal human being, and processes information exactly the same way, but completely lacks conscious experience.
So they look and act like us, but it's dark inside.
The lights are off. The argument goes, if a biological system can successfully navigate the world, avoid predators, find food, process language, and learn from its environment purely through dark, unconscious computation, which this study suggests is entirely possible for highly complex tasks, then consciousness itself has no evolutionary function.
Because evolution is ruthlessly efficient. It does not waste energy.
No, it doesn't.
And the brain is an energy hog. It's roughly 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our caloric energy, generating this vivid, colorful, loud, subjective experience of being alive, this movie playing in our heads. It must be biologically expensive.
Extremely expensive.
Why would natural selection select for an elaborate, expensive witness if the dark factory floor is already perfectly capable of processing the world and predicting the future?
It is the defining tension. If unconscious computation is this powerful, if the gears turn so perfectly in the dark, then consciousness starts to look like an evolutionary appendix, or what we call an epiphenomenon.
An epiphenomenon, meaning a byproduct.
Yes, like the sound a steam engine makes.
Yeah.
The whistle doesn't drive the train, the pressure in the boiler drives the train. The whistle is just a byproduct of the machinery working. Consciousness might just be the sound the brain makes. When certain complex cortical networks synchronize, it feels incredibly important, but it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't move the wheels.
But I reject that. It feels like it does everything.
Of course it feels that way.
When I am having a conversation with you right now, I feel like I am the one deciding to listen. I feel like I am the one straining to understand your point about epiphenomenalism, anticipating where your argument is going, and learning from it. I feel the effort.
You feel like the agent.
I feel like the driver of the car, steering the wheel, making the decisions.
And the 2026 Nature study suggests that the car might be entirely self-driving. And you, the conscious witness, are just sitting in the passenger seat with a plastic toy steering wheel, absolutely convinced you are the one making the turns.
That is existentially terrifying. If the form of the act, the semantic processing, the learning, the predicting, is fully separated from the witness, then the witness is just, what, a spectator, a passenger who thinks they're the driver.
A passenger. And while it might be existentially terrifying for you to hear that framed through the lens of neuropixels and general anesthesia and SEEZoo, it's fascinating to note that this exact realization is not new.
Really?
No. Neuroscience is just now hitting this wall with advanced silicon probes, but another group of thinkers arrived here long ago. They just traveled by a completely different road.
You're talking about the contemplative traditions.
Yeah.
The essay brings this up, and I find the parallel absolutely striking.
Yes. We are talking about thousands of years of Eastern philosophy, various schools of deep meditation, Buddhism, Advaita Vedanta. These traditions didn't have fMRI machines or high-density electrodes, but they had introspection. They developed rigorous, systematic practices for observing the mind from the inside out. And through those practices, they arrived at a suspicion that is oddly, almost perfectly adjacent to the data from this nature study.
The suspicion that the witness we take to be the doer of our experience may be more passenger than driver.
Exactly. Take the Buddhist concept of anatta, or non-self. When a practitioner sits in deep vipassana meditation, often for hours a day, for years, they strip away the distractions of daily life. They simply observe the sensory inputs and the arising of thoughts.
Just watching what happens.
And a very consistent phenomenological shift happens. They begin to notice that they aren't actually thinking their thoughts into existence.
Right. If I tell you right now, don't think of a pink elephant, the pink elephant just appears.
There it is.
You didn't painstakingly assemble the pixels of the elephant in your conscious workspace. Your unconscious semantic network retrieved it and served it to you.
The thoughts just appear, the auditory processing just happens, the beating of the heart just happens. In Advaita Vedanta, they talk about the witness consciousness, a pure observing presence that is distinct from the machinery of the mind and body.
It was separate.
The mind does the computing, the reacting, the grasping. The witness simply watches the output. These ancient contemplative traditions have long suspected that what we call subjective experience, the watching, might just be added after the fact.
A story told about events that were already completed.
Yes. The biological machinery in the dark does the oddball discrimination. It does the online word prediction. It does the semantic processing. It finishes the heavy computational work, wraps it up in a neat little package, and hands it to the conscious witness.
Oh.
And the witness, having just received the final report, says, I just understood that sentence. I am so smart. I did that.
So what does this all mean for us practically? I want to bring this directly to the listener right now. Think about the physical act of what you were doing in this exact second. You are listening to my voice.
And you feel engaged.
Right. You feel like you are actively deciding to focus on this deep dive. You feel the effort of processing the meaning of the words I am saying. You feel like the homeowner walking through the rooms of your mind, turning on the lights of comprehension.
But look at the data.
Right. What if your brain has already anticipated the end of this sentence, processed its semantics, flagged any oddball variations in my tone of voice, calculated the trajectory of the argument, and simply handed you, the witness, the finished report a millisecond later?
You feel you are the one listening. But the brain, it seems, can listen perfectly well without you. The oddball discrimination and the representational plasticity in the hippocampus of those 7 unconscious patients on the operating table perfectly mirror that ancient contemplative suspicion.
It's all happening behind the curtain.
The biological hardware is running the show in the dark. The factory is fully operational.
It brings us to the central, lingering, almost agonizing question of the essay. If these two things are separate, if the form of attending and the witness who attends are truly divorced, which one is the real thing?
Historically, humanity has always answered that question the exact same way. We answer the witness.
The experiencer, the one home. That is where we locate ourselves. If I ask you who you are, you don't describe the synaptic weights of your hippocampus doing semantic processing.
Now you'd sound like a robot.
You describe your memories, your feelings, your loves, your fears, your conscious experience of the world. We assume the meaning of life, the core of our identity, lives entirely within the witness.
Because without the witness, without the subjective feeling of being alive, it feels like nothing matters. The house is just inert wood and glass.
Yeah.
But the essay forces us to confront the fact that the form does not seem to need us. The biological shape of attending to the world went on listening in the dark. It learned in the dark. It leaned toward the next word with absolutely no one there to hear the sentence land.
So perhaps what we are is not the witness in the house. This is the thought that I just can't shake since reading Form Without a Witness. What if we have the architecture all wrong? What if consciousness isn't the homeowner?
Then what is it?
Perhaps we are simply one of the things the house does.
One of the things the house does.
When the physiological conditions are right, when the chemical balance of the neurotransmitters is correct, when the thalamus is relaying signals to the cortex, and the lights happen to be on, the house generates a witness.
It creates the feeling.
It generates a feeling of I. It projects a homeowner into the hallway. But the form, the complex machinery of interacting with the universe, of predicting reality, of learning from the environment, was never waiting for us to arrive to do its job. It was already working.
It's a profound inversion of our reality. The house isn't there to shelter the homeowner. The homeowner is just a temporary projection created by the house, a trick of the light cast on the wall by the machinery in the basement.
And if we stay in the tension of that, if we really sit with the idea that you are a passenger being handed a report of what your brain already predicted and learned in the dark, it leaves us with a deeply unsettling question to mull over, something that goes beyond just neuroscience and touches the core of how we live our lives.
Where does it leave us?
It leaves us looking at our own hands on the steering wheel. Think about the implications for human agency. For thousands of years, our justice systems, our moral frameworks, our entire society has been built on the premise that the conscious witness is the prime mover.
That we are accountable.
That you make your choices. But if consciousness is just a story told after the fact by a brain that already did all the heavy lifting, all the listening, all the learning, all the anticipating, without us,
Yeah.
then what happens to our concept of free will?
That is the natural, inescapable endpoint of this realization, isn't it? If the semantic processing and the representational plasticity happen in the dark, the decision-making might happen in the dark too.
It has to. If your brain is a dark factory that recognizes the patterns, calculates the probabilities, and leans into the future before the conscious you is even made aware of it, are you ever truly making a decision? Even right now, when you're wide awake, sitting in the light, feeling completely in control of your destiny, are you the one deciding to take the next step, or are you just the one being told the story of a decision that was already made in the dark? Are we the homeowner, or just the house dreaming it has someone inside?